The trust document allows you to effectively control things from the grave. That gives you control from the grave and will allow you to determine who's going to control your investments, who's going to distribute those investments to, or those assets that you have, to your loved ones. The other main document is what's called a healthcare power of attorney, and there's also a financial power of attorney.
Are you looking to achieve massive success in your life without dealing with costly investment nightmares? If yes, then this is the podcast for you. Here, we provide engineers and busy professionals all the secrets and strategies to create multiple streams of income, build generational wealth, and live a meaningful life by design. Here's your host, Ted Patel.
Welcome, Decoding Cashflow listeners. Today we have a guest, Jamie Lima. Jamie is a certified financial planner and founder of Woodson Wealth Management. His firm is dedicated to serving those who want help managing their financial future by providing advice in a variety of areas, including investment strategy, estate planning, and tax planning, also retirement planning. He is also a certified divorce financial analyst and founder of Allegiant Divorce Solutions, which helps people better prepare, navigate, and recover financially from divorce. Welcome to the show, Jamie. Nice to have you on the show.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks for having me.
All right. Did I miss anything in the intro?
I don't think so. That pretty much that's the Cliff Notes version.
All right. So let's dive deep into it. Now, Jamie, if you can tell our listeners about your background. How did you get started in this business, and where do you stand as of now? Like, what do you do? What is your main focus?
Absolutely. Appreciate it. So I'll give you the little bit of background on me personally. I know you're in New Jersey. I'm now in San Diego, but I'm originally from the East Coast. I'm an East Coast guy, born and raised. I grew up in a tiny little town in the smallest state, Rhode Island. And I moved to California with $1,500 in my pocket and everything I owned in my car when I was 20 years old. I knew early on that I was not one of those people that like to shovel snow in the winter and deal with, a very small window of beautiful weather. So I moved out west here to San Diego when I was about 20 years old, as I mentioned. And I worked at all kinds of odd jobs to stay here. So I worked as a bellman at the Marriott. I worked in restaurants. I managed restaurants, you name it. And I did whatever I could possibly do to stay out here and not have to put my tail between my legs and tell my parents I needed to come back home. And about 4 or 5 years into my stay here, I was still working in the restaurants. And at the time I had met my now ex-wife. We started to, we got married and then, started to have a family. But I was still working in the restaurant business, and the hours were awful. The hours were long. And I felt, for me personally, it was kind of a dead end thing. So I had always had a passion for finance, and I had tried to get into investing early on. And we kind of grew up with not a lot of money. So it was one of those things that I had focused on early on, saving and investing and things of that nature. So I ended up finishing my degree in finance. And around that same time, I had an opportunity to join a company called Morgan Stanley, basically just to get my foot in the door. I told the manager when I had the interview that I will do anything to work for this company just to give myself the experience. And I ended up joining a team there and did some administrative work. And then I was able to ultimately build my own practice there after a couple of years. So I did that for about 5 or 6 years. And then I went to a company called Fidelity Investments, where I was there for about 9 years and worked there for amazing experience, amazing opportunity. I actually got to coach and train financial advisors while I was at Fidelity for a little bit there. But I had kind of got tired of the rat race. I worked with 450 clients. It was a little much. And I decided about 3 years ago to launch my own company. My timing was impeccable, of course, because I literally walked away from that firm in April of 2020, right on the cusp of the pandemic. And it ended up turning into be a blessing in disguise, really, because we went from working face to face with people to working virtually. And instead of being geographically pigeonholed, so to speak, where I had to work with people just, that could come to my office here in San Diego, I now have the luxury of being able to work with people all over the country, which we do. We're all over the country at this stage of the game, which is awesome.
That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. I have been, my background is investment banking also. I worked with investment banks for quite some time with the Wall Street firms. So I know how this wealth management department, everything works, in this firm. Yeah, that's really a great experience, to help to get, I would say, get in knowledge of how to manage wealth, not only for personally you or me, but for everyone else. And so now, when you started this company, right, Allegiant, what is the main focus of your company within wealth management section?
Great question. Yeah, we Allegiant Divorce Solutions is the second company that I started, and it's very, very young. I mean, we literally just launched the website about a month ago. But my plan was to do some soft launch of the company in here, and I had planned to launch the company softly at the beginning of this month. And before I could even do that, by word of mouth and other associations that I'm a part of and so on, we already have, I think 7 or 8 clients that have come on board, even just as we're slow rolling this. So it's definitely an interesting niche. It's one that I should have done. This is a niche I should have been in probably 10 years ago. When I ended up getting I'm a certified financial planner, and I ended up getting that designation probably 10 or 12 years ago or so now. Mm-hmm. And around the time that I had finished that designation, I was still kind of in study mode, so to speak. And I didn't want to lose that momentum. So I thought about getting the CDFA, the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst designation at that time. And my branch manager, he kind of poo-pooed it, and he was like, "Oh, you don't really need to do that right now, and just focus on your clients and building your business here. We don't really do that kind of work." And then sure enough, 5 years later, I went through the world's nastiest divorce, not by my own doing, but it was a pretty incredibly expensive and emotionally draining divorce myself. And had I had the experience that I have now at that time, I would have done things a lot differently. So now that Woodson is starting to grow, and we have other advisors that are joining us, and I don't have to focus so much of my day to day on bringing new clients to the firm. I can now, lean into the divorce financial planning a little bit more, which is an area of passion of mine. And that's why we launched the company. So our job effectively is, in the way I describe it, is if you know somebody that's gone through divorce and is struggling they're concerned about what their life after divorce is going to look like, our job is to help them navigate the decisions that they're going to have to make, so they can take away that stress, right? So that's primarily
that's one aspect of your business, right, Allegiant? The other company, as you said, Woodson, which focuses mainly on financial planning for the other individuals, like estate planning, tax planning, retirement planning, etc.
Exactly.
Maybe if we can dive a little bit deeper into one of this area, let's pick up estate planning. Let's talk about what are the main, I would say, aspects of estate planning that every individual needs to be aware of.
I think there are three. Three main things that anyone that has someone that they care for, they want to make sure their loved ones are taken care of if something happens to them, or maybe they don't have any kids yet, or they don't really have much of an extended family, but they have some assets that they want to make sure get to the right place should something happen to them. You want to have a will or a trust. I mean, you can usually have both, especially if you have a few $100,000 in assets, you probably want to set yourself up with a trust. The trust document allows you to effectively control things from the grave. That gives you control from the grave, and will allow you to determine who's going to control your investments, who's going to distribute those investments or those assets that you have to your loved ones. The other main document is what's called a healthcare power of attorney, and there's also a financial power of attorney. So those two additional documents, and they both allow you to put somebody else in control if you're not able to speak on your behalf, right? So you have your trust in your will, You have your healthcare power of attorney, then you have your financial power of attorney. The two latter documents are effectively there if something were to happen to you and you just can't speak for yourself. Heaven forbid there's a tragic accident, or in the last 3 years, we've dealt with, the damage that's been done from this pandemic. And a lot of people were laid up in the hospital and so on and so forth, and they just couldn't do anything for themselves or control their healthcare wishes. So that healthcare document will allow you to do that. And the financial power of attorney allows you to make sure that your bills can still be paid, or people can, they can open accounts or close accounts on your behalf if something were to happen to you. So they're very, very simple documents to put in place, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to do it. And a lot of the people that I talk to, because we do work with a much younger crowd of people here at Woodson, they feel like, well, things aren't all that complex. Things are relatively simple, so I don't really need to spend the money or the time on it. And it's a huge mistake, huge mistake.
Yeah. And the thing is, people don't pay much attention to this thing sometimes until and unless they really need it. And at that point of time, they are too late in the game. Something, the time has passed.
Absolutely. My ex-wife is a perfect example of this. And I know she would be okay with me sharing this because it really changed the trajectory of her life. Her father had his life insurance policy and estate planning documents on his desk, ready to be signed. And they kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And unfortunately, he ended up he had a car accident on the 15 freeway here just outside of San Diego. Turns out he was a hemophiliac, and he bled out on the side of the road at the age of 8 for her. And their lives could have been so different. My ex-mother-in-law had to work 2 jobs sometimes just to keep a roof over their head. And it was very, very challenging for them from a financial perspective, all because of just to be blunt, pure laziness. And that's if you have loved ones in your lives and you're kind of leaning in that direction because you're afraid to take that next step to get the stuff done, I would encourage you to get it done as soon as possible, because stuff happens.
Absolutely. And I would say, do it sooner rather than later. It should be the first priority for every person to have your estate planning in place, your will in place, so that, your loved ones doesn't have to suffer if something happens in your life. And
absolutely, could have said it better.
And when you're talking about the trust, right? I've heard about the revocable trust. Can you tell us something about what the difference between these different trusts?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of exactly like it sounds, right? If you have a revocable trust, it means that you can change it at any time without prior approval from anyone. Right? And for example, my wife and I have one because we have 5 kids between the two of us. We want to make sure we have multiple businesses and property and so on. And we want to make sure that if something happens to one of us, the other one can carry on and be able to control those assets. Or if something, heaven forbid, happens to the two of us, the kids can benefit from that. And there's somebody that's in place that will help dole out those assets should something that unfortunately happen. But we can change it at any time. We've actually, because we have that kind of a crazy family dynamic right now with 5 kids between the two of us, we've made some changes over the course of the last few years. And if you have an irrevocable trust, you can't necessarily do that. Right? And then the irrevocable trust will come into place sometime later on down the road too, where, say, for example, husband and wife have a trust that's been established. Both of them have now passed away, and those assets are going to go to the kids. That trust has now become irrevocable. No one can make any changes to that. It is signed, sealed, and delivered, so to speak. And those are the main differences.
So if anyone has to open a trust, like want to get started, which is the better option?
I would say the revocable. The revocable gives you much more control. You don't have to, if you set up an irrevocable trust, there are reasons why, and I'm not an estate planning attorney, so please don't take this as legal advice, but there are reasons why you would want to have an irrevocable trust in place. But for the most part, I've been doing this almost 20 years now. It'll be 18 years at the end of the year. But I think I've only seen a handful of irrevocable trusts. They're mostly revocable.
Okay. All right. That's great. So maybe let's switch gears from estate planning to maybe tax planning.
Sure.
If you can give some advice to our listeners, what are the basic steps that they need to take for their tax planning?
I think right now, I guess there's a couple of things. One, if you're now to the point where you're starting to really build some wealth for yourself, right? You have retirement accounts, and you have some after-tax brokerage accounts, and maybe you have a lot of people that we work with have stock options and executive compensation through work. It's getting real, and it's time to start adulting. And just using, no offense, just using TurboTax doesn't always get the job done. Having somebody that you can work with that can help you navigate things like, is this the year to do a Roth conversion? Should I be making estimated tax payments? Answering those types of questions with you can go a long way in saving you from writing a sizable check to the IRS come April 15th. And we're not CPAs. We don't prepare anybody's taxes, but we do a ton of tax planning from within the financial plans that we do. And so I think if you don't have a relationship right now with somebody that a professional that can help you in that regard, it might be the time to do it. Now, if you're just starting off and you don't have any kids yet, and you don't really have a lot, there's not a lot going on, you're simply, paid W-2 salary, then maybe TurboTax or H&R Block or what have you, those types of companies are perfectly fine for you. But a lot of people that we work with have at the next level, so to speak, and things are starting to get a little more complex. So we'll partner with their CPA and manage the tax planning that way. Because
you provide advice, okay, now you need to allocate this much amount to the IRA or open a self IRA account, those kind of advices you provide.
Exactly. We work with a ton of people that are business owners, and we just had a conversation today with a gal who's self-employed, and we're talking about setting her up with a 401k plan. And it's just a matter of, hey, Ted, I talked to Susie and we were looking through her financial plan. It might make sense for her to do a Roth conversion this year of maybe, $10,000, $20,000, somewhere in that range. Here's what the tax implications are. What do you think? Okay. And so our job is to trust but verify. We can trust the mathematics of it, but at the same time, we're not going to be signing off on the tax return at the end of the year. So we want to make sure it's not a surprise to the CPA. And it's really much more of a coordinated effort than what some other firms will do.
Yeah, that's good, man. Because most of the people nowadays, right, with a high-paying job, they need this kind of advice from someone. The CPA is not CPA does his job, but he just takes the numbers from you, put it on the paper, and give it back to you. So it's better to have some advisor who can guide you before the tax season comes up, so you can allocate the fund accordingly and saves you a lot of money.
Absolutely. And we do a lot of things like tax loss harvesting and tax planning within the investments that we do. So we'll make sure as we're going throughout the course of the year, we're looking at what kind of capital gains do we have to work with? Do we need to harvest some losses if the market's down to offset those gains and reallocate the investments we have? What I found over the course of the last, 18 years of me doing this is that you have these other advisory firms that are out there that will basically charge you a fee for the entire year. And then come November, December, they finally look at the investments and go, oh, wow, we took $20,000 worth of gains this year. Maybe we need to find some losses over the course of the next couple of weeks. Well, how do you know November, December is going to be the worst 2 months in the market throughout the course of maybe your opportunity was in July to take some losses to offset some of those gains. And if you're falling asleep at the wheel or your advisory firm is falling asleep at the wheel, not paying attention to this stuff throughout the course of the year, it's a disservice to you. And so we do this all the time.
All right. And what about the retirement planning? If you can tell us listeners about, how or what are some of the best ways for the retirement planning? How should they allocate their funds? Let's talk about IRAs, 401ks.
I mentioned it a moment ago about the Roth conversions. Last year and the year prior, we were doing all kinds of Roth conversions for people. And what that simply means is is that we were taking money out of traditional IRAs or traditional 401k plans and converting that money or moving that money to a Roth IRA or the Roth side of the 401k. And by doing that, it does trigger a taxable event. So if I take $10,000 out of my traditional IRA and I move it to my Roth IRA, I have $10,000 in ordinary income. However, I now have $10,000 that's sitting in my Roth IRA that could potentially grow to $50,000 or $100,000 over the course of the next 20 or 30 years of my life. And that money will then come out tax-free at retirement. So that's the benefit of having both. And from a retirement planning perspective is, if you have a little bit of money in your traditional IRA or your 401k or your Roth IRA or your 401k, when it comes time for retirement, you have more tax levers to pull, and you can control your taxes when it comes time to retire. So what we've done a really good job over this, and this is not my ego talking, but I've seen it firsthand of some of the savings that we've made for people over time. And that was really our focus over the course of the last couple of years, is looking at every client we have and running the mathematics on it to determine whether or not doing a Roth conversion makes sense. And we've been able to save, probably, I would say probably $100,000, $200,000 or more in taxes for people just doing that in the last couple of years. So from a retirement planning perspective, those are the types of things that we look at. We want to look at where we are today, what your goals and objectives are tomorrow, and what are some of the things we can do in the moment to help you, put yourself on a much firmer path moving forward.
Okay, so what I heard from you is it's a good option to have a Roth IRA instead of the regular IRA, because whatever the money you have put, it will be non-taxable when you do the draw. And what about the self-directed IRA? How would you compare that with the Roth IRA?
Kind of one and the same. One and the same. Yeah. I mean, I think from a tax perspective, there's not a significant difference. But you're right. I mean, I believe everyone should have a Roth IRA in their portfolio. It's an amazing tax benefit to, in the future. And raise your hand if you think taxes are going down. I don't know anybody who thinks taxes are going to be going down over the course of the next 5, 10, 20 years. So you might as well take advantage of historically low tax rates. The market did pull back last year or the year prior. This year we're doing pretty good. But when you have these opportunities where the market's down, and if your advisor's just sitting there doing nothing, just telling you to ride it out and not giving you any other advice, again, it's a disservice to you, because that's your opportunity to do a conversion, maybe at a much lower dollar amount. And then when the market does recover, then you benefit from all that. It's all tax deferred, tax-free to you later. It's an amazing tool that very few people actually use, but we have some pretty powerful financial planning software that allows us to look at the mathematics behind it. Mm-hmm. It's not right for everybody, but we at least run the numbers on it.
Okay, that's great. And from the IRA, right? I'm in real estate business, mm-hmm. So I see many of our investors, they use money from their self-directed IRA to invest in outside equity market, mm-hmm. outside bonds and stocks. Mm-hmm. So what is your take on it? Like the steps that they need to take if they want to invest outside the stock market?
Yeah, I don't have a ton of experience here, but over the years, we've had a number of clients, and nobody here at Woodson at the moment has a self-directed IRA. Okay. But in my past life at some of the bigger name firms, we used self-directed IRAs to purchase real estate, especially when the real estate market was booming. And a lot of people took advantage of that, because all the income coming in from all the cash flow that's coming in is all tax deferred. And it gives you some, especially here in the state of California, where home prices were getting out of control there for a little while, you have all that tax deferred growth too. And then you can do exchanges and things of that nature with the property. So there's a lot of flexibility with it. In my experience, and you probably know this better than I do, but I only know of one company here in California that we've used in the past to do that. But I mean, my wife and I actually have an Airbnb a little farm stay Airbnb that is on our property here. We're about 30 miles inland from downtown San Diego, so it's a little more rural area. We have some property, we have an Airbnb here. So I'm a firm believer in real estate and leveraging that type of asset because, depending on where you are in the country, luckily we're here in Southern California, and home prices tend to continue to go up regardless of what the market gives us. So I'm all for it. I love the idea.
Ready. So any specific advice that you'd like to give to our listeners with regards to any of these topics, estate planning, retirement planning, just a couple of advice that they can, sit back and think about and implement?
Yeah, with estate planning, I'm a firm believer in it. It's an area of passion of mine. I probably should have been an estate planning attorney, except I did terrible in business law, so that was not a path I was going to go down. But I feel like that's an area it's low hanging fruit for you as a human being and an investor, right? I'm going to venture to guess that a lot of your listeners want to continue to grow their wealth and want to learn how to protect it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have an estate plan in place, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because if you get hit by the proverbial beer truck tomorrow, you're going to squander. You could easily squander that wealth. And the whole purpose of having an estate plan is to ensure that there's a systematic way of doling out your assets later if something happens to you. I'm going to venture to guess, again, your listeners are very smart people and educated. They probably don't want all of their stuff out into the public domain, because if you happen to go to probate because you don't have an estate plan in place, all of your information is going to be in the newspaper. If you ever go through the public notices in the newspaper, the classified section of the newspaper, 90% of them are estate planning issues, right? Because people didn't plan accordingly, and now things are going through probate. Not to mention it's incredibly expensive. So why would you want to spend more money on the courts to decide who's going to get your stuff when you could go pay an attorney, or you could simply do it online? We use a company called Trust and Will, which is an amazing digital platform where for $1,000, a husband and wife can go put their estate plan in place with all the included documents, and you can do it in about 45 minutes. So there's really no excuse. Some of the retirement planning stuff that we talked about, it's important, but it's not as easy to implement sometimes. And I think like I said, it's low hanging fruit for the estate planning stuff. It's very easy to get done. So there's no excuse for it not to be done.
Easy and most necessary thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you can't take your money with you, right? And you want to make sure this, again, coming back to my family, I want to make sure that if something happens to me, they're protected. I'm going to venture to guess that a lot of your listeners too feel the same way.
Yeah.
Why would you take the risk of not having it in place?
Absolutely. Yep. So, Jamie, just keeping time into consideration, we'll just move on to the final round of interview.
Okay.
So, what is if you can recommend maybe some books or some resources that would help our listeners who they can go through it and educate themselves?
Absolutely. You're going to be surprised that they're not finance books. They're not finance books.
Okay.
My two favorite books are on leadership. And now that I'm starting to go back into my leadership, put my leadership hat on it, and running the company and working with employees now and other advisors and so on, I'm trying to go back to some of the concepts in these two books. So the first one is The First 90 Days. I don't remember who wrote that. It's on my bookshelf over here. The book is called The First 90 Days, and the second book is called The Multiplier Effect. And the multiplier effect is all about how you go from being a solo practitioner, solopreneur, to then becoming a leader of other people and a manager of other people, and how that you're impacting so many more lives if you can manage those relationships the right way, and you can empower your people to do the rest work. And that's what I feel like my job is every day, right? Like when I started this company, I thought I was going to have what we call a lifestyle practice and have 50 or 60 clients, and I was going to work, 20 hours a week or whatever. And I was going to, sing Kumbaya and run off right off into the sunset 20 years down the road. And then I had an opportunity to add another advisor to the team, and then another advisor, and then a relationship manager. And it kind of snowballed into where we are today. And I think we're going to continue to grow. So now I have to go back to, how do I empower them to do their best work? Because now the multiplier effect can take control. And instead of me helping 60 people, now we can help 600.
Yep.
Right. And just by managing those relationships the right way. And then the first 90 days goes back to, how do you manage people and make them do their best work? It's by not managing them effectively, like literally just watching them and learning more about who they are as people over the course of the first 90 days that you're working with them, so you can help them do their best work. And there are a lot of different concepts that are embedded in both of those books, but those are the overarching theme of both of them. And I recommend anybody that's out there that is an entrepreneur or is managing people, I would recommend those two books for sure.
Yeah. Maybe I'll also pick up one of them, the first 90 days. Yeah, because I've read a lot of these books. Recently, I'm reading the book called Traction. It's a good book. Gives you an overall perspective of how to scale the business. What are the different departments in your business? How you can handle them, scale them. Well, maybe I'll pick up one of them next time.
Yeah, the first 90 days was excellent. I had already managed people in the restaurant business, and I managed in that type of environment. But then I had to coach and train financial advisors when I was at Fidelity. And it's very easy for us to say, Ted, that's not how you do the work. This is how you do it. This is how I've done it for 10 years. And I know this works. So just do it the way I'm telling you to do. And it does. And that can be proved disastrous by having that mentality and that approach. So it's more about, Ted, how do you do the best work? What do you feel most comfortable with? Are you a visual learner or an auditory learner, and learning more about who you are as a person, so I can help you be more effective and efficient, and really just watching you do your job over the course of the first 90 days and helping you self-correct when necessary. It's a pretty cool concept and an amazing book. Super easy read.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, how do you give back to the world? What's your preferred method? Like,
how do I give back to the world?
Yep.
I do a ton of pro bono work.
Okay.
I do a lot of pro bono work, and I probably take on too much pro bono work based on the amount of time I have available to me. But I work, and I specifically work for one company that's actually in your neck of the woods in New York. There's an outfit called Savvy Ladies. And it's for single women who need help with financial stuff, retirement planning and insurance. And I'm mostly doing work on the divorce side now, where you have a lot of women that are out there that, not to be sexist, but the man in the relationship or the spouse in the relationship might have been the decision maker or the breadwinner. And a lot of women that I work with just have no idea what they have for assets. They don't know what the income looks like. They don't understand the 401k plan. And it's not because they just had a different role to play in the relationship, which is what we find happens all the time. And, obviously, again, family dynamic has changed a lot over the course of the last, 10 or 20 years, but for the most part, that's what it looks like. And so I work with a lot of those women, helping them make heads or tails out of their financial situation, and make sure that when they do go to court, or they are asking for spousal support, or they're looking at what child support is going to look like, helping them navigate their budgets and figure out how they can put themselves on a much better pathway moving forward. And in many ways, visualize what life after divorce is going to look like and how they're going to manage all that. And, I'm the product of a divorce. My parents were divorced at the age of, 7 or 8, somewhere in that range. And they struggled, man. They struggled. So this is my way of giving back and helping, women that were like my mother in that circumstance, figure it all out. And it's rewarding. It's exhausting, but I do a ton of it because I'm passionate about it.
Awesome, man. All right. So the last question, Jamie, how would Decoding Cash Flow listeners get in touch with you?
Thank you for asking. The best way is probably through the main financial planning website, which is woodsonwm.com, woodsonwm.com. My bio's on there. That you can actually look at the entire team, and if you're looking for a financial advisor, we cover a wide spectrum of specialties. We have a college planner, a college planning financial advisor on the team. We have an estate planning attorney on the team. We have an advisor who is LGBTQ friendly. Not that we're not all friendly, but that's his area of focus and the people that he loves to work with as his niche. We have some retirement planning folks on the team. And I work, people in divorce. So we can pretty much cover any aspect and a lot of the demographic that's out there. So if someone's looking for some help, and we do free consultations, we don't charge anything for those discussions. And if we're not a fit, we'll help you find a fit. We can't, even though we have a wide array of people that we work with and that are on the team, sometimes something will come up and we're like, yeah, we can't really do that, but I know somebody that can, and we'll put you in touch. So we're just here to help.
All right. Sounds great, man.
Appreciate
Jamie, thanks a lot for taking time out and being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you much.
Thanks for listening to Decoding Cash Flow, brought to you by Aster Capital. If you found value in this episode, then please share it with someone who you think could benefit from it. And make sure to act on what you've learned. If you want Ted Patel to personally help you reach your goals, then feel free to set up a one-on-one call with him. Also, visit us at astercapital.com for more free resources. Content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. As always, please consult your own advisor before making any investment decisions or setting a course of action. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of Decoding Cash Flow, and we'll catch you in the next episode.